Mr. Lewis, you are a complete nut.
After Jerry Lewis died, his kids told the world a scary truth about the man who was once known as the king of comedy. There are many people who say that modern comedy wouldn't exist without Jerry. They say that he walked so that comics today could run. But Jerry Lewis's life was not at all clean or easy, even though he was funny and in the spotlight. Jerry was born on March 16, 1926, to two Jewish refugees. He grew up in a poor but artistic family. He was born in New York to a father named Danny Levitch who had come from the Russian Empire and worked as a comedy act. Rachel, his mother, was a musician from Warsaw and always had music playing in their house. Being around show business from a young age gave Jerry a crazy, spontaneous sense of humor. He was the class clown when he was a kid, always pulling jokes and making trouble for no reason. His first comedy show, called The Record Act, was smart but not complicated. Backstage, a record would play while he pretended to sing. Some people laughed, but not enough. He had a small gig in Buffalo when he was 15 years old, but it didn't go well. No one would hire him again after that. Jerry looked like he was ready to give up on show business for good. He worked any job he could find, like selling sodas and ushering in New York shows, just to make money. But fate had other ideas. One day, Jerry got back on stage with the help of an old theater friend of his dad's. After that, everything changed. For Jerry, Max Coleman, a friend from his dad's theater days, was the person who changed everything. Coleman saw something restless and raw in Jerry and told him to try acting again. Jerry took that advice and went back to the stage, where he found work in the Borch Belt, a lively group of resorts in the Catskills that catered to Jewish tourists. Their talent manager Irving Kay saw one of Jerry's shows and saw right away how talented he was. He quickly took him under his wing. In the 1940s, most young men were sent to war, but Jerry's life went in a different direction. His heart murmur meant that he couldn't serve in the military. This was a cruel turn of events that would change his life forever. They met during this time. Her name was Patty Palmer, and she was a beautiful singer with a smooth voice. They fell in love very quickly, and on October 3, 1944, they got married. They had what looked like a lovely family together. In 1949, they adopted a son, and in the 1950s they had 5 more children. People outside of their marriage thought it was wonderful. Two performers who were living their dream. But as Jerry's fame grew, problems started to show in their relationship behind closed doors. Fame makes everything look bigger, even the bad and broken things. Jerry, who was 19 at the time, was playing at the Glass Hat Club in New York City just 1 year after they got married. Dean Martin, a 27-year-old singer who was still getting used to the stage, was with them. At that very moment, neither of them knew it, but fate had just set them up to meet history. The next time fate struck was at the 500 Club in Atlantic City 2 years later in 1946. The main singer quit all of a sudden, which threw the show into chaos. Jerry quickly thought of the idea that Dean should step in, and that one choice changed comedy forever. After that night, Lewis and Martin were impossible to stop. A comedy team with the energy, timing, and chemistry to change the way people think about what it means to laugh. It started out as a last-minute fix, but it turned into one of the best relationships Hollywood had ever seen. In the beginning, though, things weren't nearly as wonderful as history says they were. In fact, their first shows together were a complete disaster. Skinny D'Amato, the owner of the 500 Club, was so unimpressed that he told them they would be kicked off the stage if they didn't quickly improve. Martin and Lewis were about to lose everything before they even started working together. They took a huge risk because they were desperate to make things better. Instead of following their carefully thought-out plans, they chose to just wing it. Jerry cut Dean off while he was singing, which caused chaos that worked in some way. Their spontaneous chit-chat, bold ad-libs, and electric chemistry made everyone in the room laugh out loud. That's when the magic began. They were able to do anything once they found that spark. Martin and Lewis started playing shows all along the East Coast. Eventually, they got a spot at New York's famous Copacabana Club, which is a sign of success for any growing star. The act they did was new, unexpected, and hard to miss. Their fame had grown huge by 1948. They were hired by NBC to be on the hit radio show The Martin and Lewis Show, which ran until 1953. At the same time, Ed Sullivan was the host of a new comedy show called Toast of the Town, which was starting to get a lot of attention. Martin and Lewis were in the first show, which captivated the country right away. After that, their rise could not be stopped. They were the most talked about comedy team in America because of their charm, quick wit, and real friendship. What almost went wrong in a small club in Atlantic City turned into one of the most famous acts in the history of theater. Since Martin and Lewis's radio show was a huge hit, they naturally thought that their move to TV would be just as successful. But things tend to happen again and again. And just like their rough start at the 500 Club, their first few weeks on TV were rough too. The crazy energy and goofy humor that made people laugh in real life didn't quite work on TV. The reviews showed that viewers were confused rather than pleased. Still, TV was hard for them, but Hollywood was ready, and that's where their real fame would begin. By 1949, Paramount Pictures had signed the two to work together on movies, and their first movie together would be My Friend Derma. Marie Wilson and Diana Lynn played unlucky in love roommates in the movie, and Martin and Lewis were cast as supporting comics. That is, until people saw them together. Then they stole the show. Just like that, Martin and Lewis were the next big thing in Hollywood. They had great chemistry and great timing. Between 1950 and 1956, they were in 14 movies together that ruled the box office and defined a time in comedy. But success often comes with dark sides. One of those shadows for Jerry Lewis was a young actor called Sammy Petrillo. Even though Petrillo was 8 years younger than Lewis, he looked a lot like him. The similarity was so strange that it was almost scary. Most people would have laughed it off, but Jerry saw it as a danger. To keep his image in check, he chose to pull Petrillo closer instead of pushing him away. The young performer was hired to play a child in a sketch on the Colgate Comedy Hour. But Petrillo says that meeting was not at all friendly. He later said that Jerry was rude and dishonest. Still, he agreed to sign with Jerry's own talent agency, MCA. He hoped that this would help his business. Instead, it went totally wrong. Jerry kept his promises of new parts, chances, and exposure, but they never came true. Petrillo knew right away that Lewis wasn't helping him at all. In fact, Jerry's main goal seemed to have been to keep him from getting any attention. There was no way Jerry Lewis could help Sammy Petrillo without taking him under his wing. He did it to keep him out of the way. Jerry made sure that Petrillo would never get the chance to work, risk his career, or steal the show by signing the young lookalike to his agency and then putting him on hold. Lucky for Sammy, his father stepped in and fought to get him out of the deal because he was still a minor. In the early 1950s, Petrillo met Duke Mitchell, a singer with a smooth voice. They were a comedy team that, whether they meant to or not, copied Martin and Lewis's act. I thought it was funny, but Jerry didn't. Lewis supposedly used his growing power in Hollywood to stop the two from getting work anywhere he could because he was mad that someone was copying his style of comedy. By 1956, Jerry had his own bigger issues. His contract with Dean Martin was coming to an end. They used to be the most popular act in show business. As their fame grew, the attention turned more and more toward one person. People and the press loved Jerry's crazy energy, his childish charm, and his amazing ability to make people laugh with his body. That was not true for Dean. He was seen as the straight man and the beautiful singer was just along for the ride. The mismatch was bad. In 1954, Look magazine did the worst thing possible by publishing a picture of Martin and Lewis together, but Dean was cropped out so that Jerry was the only one in the center. It was the symbolic moment that broke up the little piece they still had. Right after that, their friendship was very weak. Hollywood or Bust, 1956, their last project together was not a happy one at all. Making the movie was tense and cold. It was no longer funny on the set or in their hearts. After the cameras stopped rolling, they finished up their last few obligations, which included a final set of shows at New York's Copacabana Club. 10 years after they first worked together, Martin and Lewis took the stage together one last time. Even though the crowd roared, it was the end of an age behind the curtain. One of Hollywood's best pairs went out when the lights went out. He was adrift after the split. He didn't know who he was without Dean by his side. After 10 years of success, he no longer had the confidence that made him who he was. But fate had other ideas, as it always does. Jerry got a call from Sid Luft, Judy Garland's husband and manager, while he and his wife were on vacation in Las Vegas. Garland needed to miss the show because she had strep throat. Could Jerry fill in for her? He wasn't sure at first. It felt impossible to stand on that stage by myself. But he knew he had to say yes. It might have been the same spark that saved him at the 500 Club. And that one act would be the turning point that made Jerry Lewis a star in a whole new way. This time as a hero by yourself. The response from the crowd was huge. The cheers from the crowd gave Jerry Lewis the courage to stand on his own. Things were different after that night in Vegas. The response made him want to record the songs he had played, which quickly got him a record deal. Soon he started playing at the Sands Hotel and Casino all the time, which was the start of his new solo business. Live shows became very important to him after that. Lewis had shown that he could win people over without Martin. He really made people laugh. He then did TV shows and from 1956 to 1959, hosted the Academy Awards 3 times. Lewis made history in 1959, when he signed a huge deal with Paramount that gave him artistic freedom and made him the highest-paid actor in Hollywood. In 1960, Paramount put Cinderfella off until Christmas, so they asked Lewis to make another movie quickly. That's when he made The Bellboy, a movie in which he also starred, directed, co-wrote and produced. Because he was filming during the day and playing at night, Lewis was very busy. That said, the outcome would forever change how Hollywood movies are made. Instead of focusing on a lot of dialogue, The Bellboy was all about Jerry Lewis's trademark physical comedy. This fit his style and saved a lot of time on the set. But his real big break came from coming up with new ideas, using video monitors to look over each scene right away, which let him reshoot right away instead of having to wait for daily film pictures. But not everyone saw things the way he did. Paramount got worried about the movie's lack of sound and pulled their backing. Lewis was determined to see it through, so he paid for the rest himself. He won in the end. Both critics and fans loved The Bellboy, which became one of his biggest hits. After that, Jerry Lewis had a lot of creative power over his work. He often wrote, directed, produced, and starred in his own movies. Still, the time he spent with Dean Martin hung over him. The pain of their breakup left mental scars. Lewis would later say that he and Martin hadn't talked alone in 20 years, which was something he greatly regretted. Frank Sinatra set up a surprise meeting for them during Lewis's yearly Labor Day telethon in 1976. It was the most touching time they had together again. It was only a moment of peace, but it was one of the few bridges Lewis was able to fix. His domestic life, on the other hand, stayed rough. Even though he cheated on Patty Palmer for years, they were married for almost 40 years before she finally asked for a divorce in 1980. Soon after, Lewis met Sandra Pitnick, who used to work as a flight attendant and was trained as a dancer. She had a small dancing part in his movie Hardly Working. In 1983, they got married, and in the early 1990s they adopted a daughter. Lewis never looked back at his first family again, even as the curtain on his life began to close. Jerry Lewis had always had weak health. In 1960, when he was only 34 years old, he had his first heart attack. After that there were 2 more, one in 1982 and one in 2006. So when he finally died in 2017 from heart problems, it wasn't the time that shocked people, but the fact that he'd been able to hold on for so long. He was 91 years old against all chances. After he died, Lewis's impact made people like him and dislike him, especially his own family. He had been married to Patty Palmer for almost 40 years and they had 6 boys together. In a cruel twist, Lewis left all of them out of his will, leaving his money only to his second wife, Sandra Pitnick, and their adopted daughter. His kids began to talk about life behind closed doors after he died, painting a painful picture of what it was like. Anthony, his youngest son, said that his dad was always changing who he was. He never knew which Jerry Lewis would show up. He said that he was mentally abusive, but he did say that he still had some love for the man who raised him. Gary, his brother, was not as forgiving. He said their father was mean and evil and that Jerry never loved any of his children. After many years, in 2022, there was a new wave of debate. Vanity Fair released an article with accusations from some of Lewis's female co-stars from the 1960s that he harassed, sexist, and even sexually assaulted them. As of now, those claims have not led to any government action, but they added another cloud to his already troubled reputation. Still, even with all the chaos, one thing is still clear. Jerry Lewis changed the way people laugh for good. Before him, humor was set in stone, safe and easy to guess. He broke that pattern. In spite of everything, he was brave enough to be stupid, take chances and laugh at his own flaws. Many of the great comedians of today, like Steve Martin, Richard Pryor, and Jim Carrey, got their start with Jerry Lewis. Many artists have been influenced by him and have followed his brave example. When the news of Lewis's death came out, Jim Carrey said it best. Jerry's comedy pushed the limits of what was real to the point where it was an act of anarchy. He wasn't just funny, he changed the world. Click the thumbs up button and subscribe if you like this Fact 8 movie. You can see more amazing stories like this one. You can join our membership program through the link in the description if you want to help us choose who to cover next. We can't do it without your help. Enjoy your time and we'll see you in the next